Hello, I'm Sarah Thompson-Copsey and welcome to today's MBL webinar, Enforcing Leasehold Covenants. And today we're going to be looking at enforcing leasehold covenants from the landlord's perspective. So we're looking at tenants in breach of covenants. When a landlord's faced with a defaulting tenant, then the landlord's got choices as to what it wishes to do. It could just simply ignore the breach, and some types of breaches, landlords just do ignore them because they think, well, what am I actually going to do here? So breach of the covenant against signage, putting up signage with that landlord's consent, is a covenant that many landlords just ignore or possibly don't even know about. But where the landlord is faced with a breach of covenant by the tenant that is more serious, then the landlord again still has choices. And most of the covenants that the landlord will be concerned about on a day-to-day basis, in my experience, are breaches of covenants to pay money. So failure to pay rent, failure to pay service charge, failure to pay insurance premiums. And of course, we're talking here about commercial leases, not about residential leases. And in those circumstances, the landlord does have the choice. It could negotiate with the tenant and try and reach some form of accord as to how the default is dealt with. So in case of rent, there may be a rental holiday or move to monthly payments from quarterly payments, for example. So negotiation is, for many landlords, actually the first step, and a step that we're not involved in at all. But it is something that we need to talk to landlords about when they come to see us, when they talk to us about a tenant being in breach. Have you thought about negotiating? The landlord could choose to end the lease, and that's probably the most draconian remedy that the landlord has. And whether the landlord chooses to do that is very, very market dependent. A landlord will not wish, on the whole, to be left with empty premises, given the problem of business rates and empty business rates and the changes that have been made to that. Or the landlord could try to force compliance. And that's actually what, in my experience, particularly landlords who are not very professional actually want. They say, well, why can't you make the tenant do what it promised to do within the lease? So whatever course the landlord chooses is going to depend really on the landlord's appetite for litigation, its willingness to work with the tenant, and market conditions. Does it actually want a vacant property back? Can it re-let at the same, or possibly, potentially, hopefully, even a higher rent? So we're going to be looking today at tenant covenants, and we're going to be looking at it in two ways, or dealing with breach of tenant covenants. We're going to start by looking at breach of the rental covenant, and in here I'm including insurance premiums and service charges, because by and large in commercial leases those are reserved as rent. And in my experience, that's the overwhelming driver for a landlord, is to make sure its rental income stream is secure. And so that will be the starting point for a landlord. Most landlords are going to come and ask, what do we do about the tenant's breach of covenant when it comes to failure to pay the sums under the lease?